Metal Jesus here, and I'm back again with part 2 of my PlayStation 2 Hidden Gem series. Now, one of the things I love about the PlayStation 2 is that there were so many great games released for it across almost every genre. You had RPGs, racing games, puzzle games, platformers, you name it, there were games for it. As a matter of fact, there were so many games that a lot of them just got missed. And so that's what I like to do in this series, is show you some of the hidden gems. Now, what makes this video so unique is that a lot of them are exclusive to the PS2, and there's some really weird games in this video. Let's take a look. Legend of K was pretty much ignored upon its original release, but is the very definition of a hidden gem. This game mixes action, platforming, adventure, and puzzle gaming, where you play as a cat who practices martial arts and really just general ass kicking. This game actually reminds me of Mini Ninjas. I don't know if you watched my Xbox 360 Hidden Gems, but this game feels very similar to that. And that's a good thing. Now, you could kind of critique that the levels are fairly linear, but honestly, I don't mind because often that eliminates any backtracking that you would have to do. Also, this game has pretty decent graphics, especially for a budget title. I mean, they're pretty colorful and there's almost no slowdown. All in all, this is actually a really great little game and it's highly polished. It's a real shame that more people don't know about it. Gungriffon Blaze is a working designs game that was originally another budget title when released, but it's surprisingly awesome. Now, it's important to think of this game as more of a first-person shooter than the traditional sort of mech game. As a matter of fact, it kind of reminds me of Tribes a bit, where you do a lot of jumping around and sniping from above. Now, I've reviewed some other mech games on my channel, like Chrome Hounds and things like that, and this game is definitely not like that. Like I mentioned before, this is really fast-paced and just a ton of action. However, the one real problem with this game is that the controls really suffer because they're basically the opposite of what has become commonplace now, and unfortunately they can't be changed. As a matter of fact, I spent about the first 15 minutes playing this game, frankly just looking at the ground and looking at the sky. I was a complete mess trying to play this game. However, if you give yourself enough time to learn the controls, man, there is a ton of fun to be had here. Once I did that, I was playing this game for hours. It's really awesome. I finally found myself a copy of Mr. Mosquito. Yes, this game is wacky. So, like the title might suggest, in this game you play as a small mosquito who has invaded this Japanese family. Now, your goal is to drink as much of their blood as possible to prepare for winter. And you need to do this by avoiding their attacks, and sometimes they have deadly insecticides to avoid. Now, the trick to all this is to do it while the humans are distracted. Like, they'll watch TV, or maybe the phone will ring, or even better yet, if they're sleeping. And often you can trigger these distractions yourself. You'll see a button like on the stereo, you bump it with your needle nose, I guess, and the human will get up and go over there and they'll be distracted for a bit. And sometimes they'll spot you and get all aggravated and angry. And at that point, you can poke them in pleasure zones to calm them down and soothe them so that you can zero in and get their blood. Like some other games in this video, unfortunately the controls in this game are also kind of funky and weird to get used to. I don't know if maybe because it was like an early PlayStation 2 game or what, but it does take some getting used to. Also, this game may look all cute and whimsical, and it is, I mean, but it's also really difficult. There are 12 stages, and by the time you get about halfway through, you're gonna be pulling your hair out. This is not an easy game. However, if you stick with it, you will end up playing one of the most unusual PlayStation 2 games I have ever had the pleasure of owning. It's so interesting and unique, and definitely should be part of your game collection. Silpheed the Lost Planet is another in a long line of awesome treasure games and also working design games. So what to say about this game? I mean, as you can tell by the video, it's another badass shoot 'em up. And you guys know that I like my shmups. I always seem to put these in some of my videos. And this is another really good one. It has really great graphics, also power-ups to vary your gameplay. And the thing that I like most about it, at least initially, it's not too difficult. Honestly, I'm not that great at shmups. I wish I was better, but I do enjoy playing them. And this is a game that at least people like me who can just kind of jump in, have a great time. But there is some challenge in this game, especially later on. Also, I want to mention working designs. Now, I've mentioned them a couple times in this video, as well as other videos, and working design games are just a joy to collect. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, they're just really high quality game releases, and you don't see them like this anymore. For one, the covers just stand out. They usually have this high gloss, almost like a foil look to them. They just look really cool and expensive, and they definitely stand out in your collection. The other thing I really like is that the manuals are always really in depth, and so they don't skimp on this stuff. And it's something that you just don't see anymore. The manuals are a joy. And the thing I love about it too is that usually at the end of the manual, they talk about what it took to bring this game to market. They talk about whether they need to make some changes if it was coming over from Japan, maybe they had to tweak the graphics or the frame rate or something like that. They're just amazing games to collect for, and so I just kind of want to mention that. Disaster Report. I'm so excited to cover this game finally. Also, it should be noted that this game is also called SOS Final Escape in Europe. This game is a mix of, say, adventure and then perhaps survival horror, although horror would be a bit of a stretch here because really this game is kind of based more in reality. However, there's definitely a threat all throughout this game. You play as a reporter who is traveling on a train when a huge earthquake hits a city and just completely disrupts life. As a matter of fact, you're traveling over this bridge and immediately you're in danger. Everything is just gone to hell. You spend your time in this game gathering items like a traditional adventure game. Things to unlock doors or maybe help you survive, like crowbars, food, rope, maybe even bottles to store water. Now, speaking of water, actually, dehydration in this game is a really big deal. A lot of the things that you do will make you dehydrated, so you have to kind of watch your water content and your water supply. It's almost everything that you do in this game. Now, you can kind of tell by the video here that this is an early PlayStation 2 game, so the graphics really aren't that great. They're not that impressive, but I'll tell you what, the tension in this game is real. This is unlike anything I've ever played. Also, this game isn't too long. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It takes about 6 hours to complete, but it does have multiple endings if you're interested in that. And, surprisingly, this actually has a pretty interesting story. So if if it looks interesting to you, I suggest you take a look at it. Maximo Ghost to Glory is one of two really excellent Maximo games that appeared on the PlayStation 2, which, if it sounds familiar, that's because it's part of the Ghosts and Goblins franchise. Now, at the time of this game's original release, many people compared this to the Jak and Daxter series, and admittedly, they do share a lot in common. For instance, you will spend a lot of time jumping and platforming around, but in this game you'll also be battling the typical skeletons and other enemies, picking up power-ups, and then you gather coins for your trouble. However, there's a reason why a lot of people who own this game back in the day consider it to be one of the best, if not the best, PlayStation 2 platforming game of all time, and that's because, like Ghosts and Goblins, this game is tough as nails. However, it is fair. Now, admittedly, you guys know that I'm kind of a gaming wimp, and honestly, I think this game's a little bit too tough for my taste, although I don't know what it is. It must be just the fact that the controls are awesome, the combat's great, the graphics are really smooth and fast. I found myself really enjoying this game. I actually reviewed this game when it originally came out, and then I bought it again recently. I would also say too, is that if you do like really tough platforming games, buy both of these Maximo games because they're both really excellent, and they only came out on the PlayStation 2. War of the Monsters was created by Incognito, which actually may sound kind of familiar because they also made the classic Twisted Metal series, as well as another racing game that I really like called Downhill Domination, and more recently, Warhawk. So this game is a love letter to 1950s cheesy style monster movies, and this game is pretty awesome. I mean, basically you jump around, smashing buildings, picking up cars, throwing objects, basically trying to beat the tar out of each other. And to help you do this, the buttons are mapped to things like weak attacks, hard attacks. You can grab your opponent, you can block, and then of course you can jump. You do a lot of jumping in this game. And of course you get to play as different monsters, whether it's robots or Godzilla types, or maybe like a praying mantis. All sorts of really fun and interesting monsters are there, and each has their own unique moves and weapons. There's also bonuses to unlock, including new monster skins, some mini games, and also new arenas to battle in. But at the end of the day, this is a pretty simple and fun beat 'em up brawler game where really you just want to crush your enemy. And honestly, destroying buildings and the environment never gets old. Okage Shadow King is a hilarious RPG about a little boy who opens up this really weird kind of mysterious bottle to save his sister from a pig Latin curse. I know, I can't make this stuff up. And it basically releases a Shadow King who wants to take over the world. Now, the Shadow King is technically evil, and he is attached to the boy as his shadow. However, while the Shadow King was trapped in that bottle, several other false kings have risen and are pretending to be him, and this really pisses him off. So he basically kind of makes you, not really his slave, but basically you're attached to him. And you need to go throughout the world and try to take down those evil kings so that the true evil king, the Shadow King, can rule the world. Again, I can't make this stuff up. Now, as you can tell, the dialogue here is really the star. This game is laugh out loud funny. It's actually pretty damn hilarious, and it's anything but ordinary. Also, I really dig the art style in this game. It kind of reminds me of Tim Burton style movies, The Nightmare Before Christmas, that sort of stuff. Also, the combat's very fun, very familiar. It's turn-based, so it doesn't stray too far from the norm, and it involves melee and magic. Now, the one thing is you don't actually directly control the Shadow King, whose name happens to be Stan, by the way, which is kind of funny itself. But basically, he will do a really powerful magic attack and help you out. Not a lot of people know about this game, and it's a real shame. So if you like RPGs that make you laugh and try to do something a little different, I highly recommend this. I've actually covered a couple of the Klonoa games on my channel before, but the PlayStation 2 version's really good as well. And a lot of people consider this to be one of the best 2D platformers ever made. Now, I call this a 2D platformer, but really it's a 2.5D platform. I mean, the entire environment's in 3D, but really you're just kind of going down this set path. However, occasionally you will jump into the foreground or the background, which is actually pretty cool. Also, occasionally the perspective will change and you'll do some racing sections, which actually kind of breaks up the gameplay. And this game has great cel-shaded graphics and a lot of really fun characters. I just love this series, actually. Another reason why I like it is because it's pretty good for beginners, because I guess I would say it's relatively easy and not too frustrating, at least for me. I mean, I'm not great at a lot of platformers, and I find this game to be just perfect. Also, there really aren't that many games like this anymore, and I kind of miss that, and so this is a really, really good one. The first time I fired up Aqua Aqua, I was like, hey, this game kind of reminds me of Wet Tricks on the Dreamcast. Well, it should, because this is actually the sequel. This is a 3D puzzle game where you very quickly have to place these building blocks that fall from the sky on the 3D plane that's in front of you to prepare for water that will eventually fall. So the goal is to try to contain as much of that water for as long as possible. Now that sounds easy, but it's actually pretty tough. And the pieces come down in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and you're desperately trying to build, like, say, a swimming pool-like structure to hold all the coming water. Also, some pieces will build up the land and others will help tear it down. So the playing field is constantly changing. Thankfully, there are some power-ups that will occasionally fall, like this fireball that when it hits water will evaporate it and help you manage that. Also, bombs will just blow holes in things. And if played right, you can kind of start over and sort of help prepare for what's coming next. This is a surprisingly addictive and very challenging puzzle game, and I actually like it quite a bit. Primal was a game that I originally reviewed way back when it very first came out, and even then I was really impressed with it. You play as Jen, who's this modern girl who is pulled into this medieval world suddenly, with the ability to transform into these savage demon forms, each with their own abilities. And to help things out, you have a little sidekick named Scree, who's hilarious. I like to think of this game as a cross between the early Tomb Raider games and Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. In addition to some really excellent and satisfying combat, this game also has a bunch of puzzles that will require both characters to solve. And Sony hired some great Hollywood quality voice actors for this game, especially with Jen and Scree, which makes you really enjoy the characters and dialogue even more. This is a really high quality release, and it's a shame more people just didn't play it when it came out. All right, well, there are some more hidden gems out of my collection for the PS2. Now, like I mentioned in the intro, man, there are just so many great games for this console. And one of the things I love about YouTube is that you guys help me discover games. And so I'd love to know what games I've missed. Please post down in the comments below. Tell me what hidden gems I need to add to my collection. I'd love to know. As always, I want to thank you for watching my channel and thank you for subscribing. Take care.